Today we're going to be taking a look at set 2509 Earth Dragon Defense from the Lego Ninjago theme, containing 227 pieces. This set retailed for $35 US. Now if you want to purchase this set new today, it's going to cost you an average of $255 US, and if you want to get it used, it's going to cost you an average of $87 US. Taking a look at our first minifigure, we have Cole DX. Starting with his face is accurate to what's seen in the show. His torso is accurate as well, along with the sash. His legs, however, are a bit inaccurate. This inner portion of the tail should be a little bit lower on the left side, and then on the right side, the starting or the continuation of the tail should be lower, and the ending of the tail should be lower from this top portion as well. Taking a look at his what should be side printing, he should have side printing here as well, which is the continuation of this tail and this dragon up here, but we know that they don't really do side torso printing, but they could have done lower leg side printing. Then taking a look at his back, Cole's symbol is accurate along with his name here, and he should have some printing here along the side indicating the back of the dragon. Now he does not have an alternate face, but that is okay, as he's gonna wear the mask anyways. So here he is fully geared up, and he is also given a sword, which instead of a sword, I would have preferred a makeshift scythe, as he is, training to use the Scythe of Quakes, essentially. Taking a look at our second and final minifigure of the set, we have Whiplash. He is not seen in any scenes with this dragon, but we can still take a more detailed look at him. Starting with his face, his pupils should actually be black. His actual face entirely is pretty accurate, except these cracks here, they should be a little bit larger, but this is fine to me as well. The armor, the back white fangs back here should be black. These portions right here that look like wrappings should be brown, indicating makeshift armor. The symbol here for the Skulkin is correct. The sash is the correct color. Then taking a look at his back, he should have more sash printing here with the same color of white as on the front. Another thing that we get with this minifigure is this printing right here of a worm coming out of his head, which I personally like, but again, it is not accurate to what's in the show. But I think this is perfectly fine for me. I really enjoy it. It adds more character to him. And again, he comes with a hat, which is canon to him. And he also comes with two more accessories, a sword and a torch. Now, the sword, I'm not a big fan of. I really enjoy the bone weapons that they give these characters. So I would have preferred another bone axe, even if it's repetitive. I would have enjoyed that. And the torch is a little nice addition just to add more to the character. Before taking a look at the Earth Dragon, we have this small build to take a look at first. Now this small build is nothing special. It's just a couple of bricks stacked on top of each other with a holder in the back just to keep the Scythe of Quakes in place. The Scythe of Quakes is nothing special. It's the same thing we've been getting. It's still a decent look for what it is, but again, it could have been a lot better with a mold for the head. Now, another thing we get with this set, besides this little build, is this boulder. Now, this boulder will come into play a little bit later again, but I want to show you what's inside of the boulder as well, as this is a mold. So in here we get this doesn't essentially come in here, but this is where I place it, because you're supposed to have two Zamospheres, or two little ball blasts that come with the dragon. Now you got one in his mouth, as you can see right there on my left finger, and you got this one. So this is just for safekeeping. Then you also get, as you can see, 3 diamonds in here. Now, these aren't the correct ones. I had to replace some of these from my personal parts collection that I have, but I will show the correct color ones on screen just for reference for you guys. So we'll put this back in here for safekeeping, and again, we will see this boulder again later for something else. Finally, we have the Earth Dragon. Now, we're going to work our way from the front to the back of the dragon, starting with his head. We're going to look at this lower jaw first. So this gray and sand green area should be a deep purple, which is seen in the show. The mouth, the dragon in the show doesn't actually have a tongue. So the choice in here could have been, a couple of different variations of this. Gunmetal gray here doesn't bother me that much, to be honest. I'm okay with it. I would have preferred either a dark brown or either a sand green as well, and quite possibly a deep purple if they would have gone with that color scheme. Moving on to this dragon blast that he has here in his mouth. This could have been either I would say a brown, dark brown, or a darker tan, more like this, and that would have suited it better to what it's supposed to be. This color just doesn't match what a dragon blast would be for me personally. Now moving on to the upper head. The upper head in the show does not have all of these crazy designs in it. It's kind of just a big mold of brown, and the eyes are a bright green. So all these designs we see here are not present. But I will say that I do like these designs being here more than it just being a big mold of brown. The head shape is also very different. The dragon in the show has a more round head right here in the front area, but for the most part, the rest of it seems pretty accurate to what he looks like. These spikes up here are also canon to what's in the show, so those are accurate as well. Moving on from there, we get to these sand green fan-like structures back here, which is some body part of the dragon. I'm not quite sure what it's called, but it's there. And the way that it is in the show is it starts essentially from the back of his head here, and it comes out and it fans out, essentially curves out. And in the show, there is 5 points on each side for a total of 10. And as you can notice here, we only have 4 in total. Now, that part doesn't really bug me that much. I think that this design is okay. I would have liked maybe 2 more sticking out down here for a total of 6 at least, so it would have been a little bit more spread out. But this is okay for me. Moving on from that portion, we can get to this area back here, which is where the rider sits essentially. Now, this dragon is supposed to have a neck as well, where the rider is supposed to have his chair where he sits. Now here you can see we don't really get much of a neck in there. It's very crowded, but I would have liked to see a neck in there because that's where the rider's chair is supposed to go, where these essentially banners are attached to that chair. Now, another thing about these banners is that these banners aren't actually present on the dragon within the show. He instead just has spear-like shapes coming out, or just a spear essentially coming out with no banner attached to it. So that's another inaccuracy we get in there. Moving on from there to the body, the body itself, right, is supposed to be way bulkier than this. I feel like this isn't, if you can see, it isn't bulky enough for what a earth dragon should be. It's still okay in size, but the bulkiness should be a lot bigger, I would say. The body for the dragon as well has spikes going down the back of it. I would have liked to see at least a couple of those. These tan elements that are in here just kind of spread out that you see in the legs as well. These aren't actually present within the show version of the dragon, but I will say that it adds more character to the dragon instead of it just being one big brown blob. Essentially, there's more character in this dragon. Another thing about this quote-unquote dragon, right, is wings. We don't get any wings on this dragon, which is a shame, because in the show he has wings. I don't know what the decision for that is, but Wings on a dragon are kind of important. He's shown flying multiple times in the show, at least twice, right? So wings would have been something that's very important for this particular dragon as well. Every other dragon has it, and they should have gave it to him, but we don't get them. Now going from there, the underside of the belly, right? It should have a deep purple color, as I mentioned before, that the lower jaw should have, which it doesn't. It just has a couple of pieces, a couple of gray brown pieces in there. But it's okay, you don't see that as much with something sets like this. And I think it's okay, but would I have liked to seen it? Yes. It would have thrown me off because it wouldn't have been fully built out. So I think, thinking on it from a logical perspective, I think this still makes more sense than doing that. But if it was something like a fully built out dragon where it had an underside with scales essentially, I think it would have looked very good. Now moving from the underside, we can go to these legs. So these legs are very small for what compared to what we see in the actual show. In the show, the legs have joints, so they're able to bend and, you know, do all kinds of stuff like that. Anything normal. These legs are very stationary. They don't have any joints so that you can bend them, except at the bottom and where they're attached. So these legs are very small compared to what we see in the show. These especially, these are even smaller than these front ones, which there's a reason for that I will get into. Before we move on to that reason, these feet should also be a deep purple, which they are not. But again, looking at this design, I think it fits that they're this color versus a deep purple. Now, moving on to these back legs, the reason that they're so small is because of the mechanism of the tail, which we'll get into more later as well. Before that, I want to talk about the actual tail itself and the design for it compared to what's seen in the show. So the design for this tail essentially should have more spikes running down the back, and it would have started from the body, right? And they would go down the back up until they get to the end of the tail. At the end of the tail, we should have essentially a ball, a big ball, and that ball would have more spikes coming out of it. So it's kind of similar to this, but it would have been a lot more detailed. It would have had 4 spikes total. So this ball would have a spike coming out the back, 1 spike coming out the top, and then 2 spikes coming out the side. And that would have been the structure of the tail if it was accurate to what was seen in the show. Now, this particular dragon has 2 main features. One being this shooting feature in the head, which is, it's very similar to one of the other dragons I have reviewed on here. But if this is your first review, I will show it for you. So the feature on this dragon is that if you squeeze the head, and what I'll do is I'll shoot the wall, then I'll shoot it off camera. If you squeeze the head, and if I can get it at a perfect angle, the ball shoots out with quite the force. And okay, maybe I won't shoot it off camera because it went a little bit further away than I thought it was gonna. But you can see as how hard it shoots out just through that mechanism alone. And I think that, that I like that mechanism. I like the idea of, if I was a kid back in the day and I had this set, I would have loved the idea of shooting a dragon's, some type of dragon breath at an enemy, and just wiping out a battalion or something like that of skeletons. So I like that design, or that mechanism. The other mechanism is focused in the tail. So earlier in the video, I talked about this boulder, and this boulder, I said it would play a part later in the video, where here is where it plays that part. So the reason, again, that these legs are so low to the ground, and they're not the same size as these front legs, right, is because of this mechanism. They had to be lower in order for this mechanism to work. So as you can see, we have this little gear here, and you can already start seeing what's about to happen is it sways the tail. So let me get this further back so that you guys can get it, a better view of it. So it sways the tail, right? And essentially the mechanism or the play feature is that you hit, if you swing this hard enough, you hit this ball and you hit it at an enemy or it cracks and the gems spill out, right? So I like that feature as well. I like this mechanism of swinging the dragon's tail because it's very realistic as to what a dragon would do. Now, earlier as well, I talked about the movement of this dragon. There is, the front legs are not as limited as anything else. So those are probably the freest parts. The tail obviously has this mechanism, so there's only so much you can do with it in terms of posing, and that just fell off, but that's no big deal. Let me just put that back in there. It looks like that. Yeah, it'll be fine. But essentially, right, is that this, you can't really do much with this posing because it has to have this mechanism in place. These back feet are really a crutch on this dragon. I wish they're just stationary. They just don't move. I wish they would, because there's no reason for them to be stationary. The only thing they had to be was low to the ground, right? So that this mechanism would work. But they went through the process of making them stationary for whatever reason when they didn't have to. So that's a crutch. But then we also have this, if you can see it, this middle portion here. And this middle portion allows for essentially the dragon to turn its body back and forth, and you can also twist it because of that mechanism, and you can get it into a little bit better poses, such as maybe it reaching out, trying to claw at something more dynamic. Now there's probably better ways to do this now, but for the time I think this is okay. I don't think it's that bad, but again, I would have preferred to have some better stuff back here. So again, here we have everything that you get from purchasing the Earth Dragon Defense set. Now, my thoughts on this set are, again, both split in terms of good and bad. First, I really like the design they went with in terms of, you know, the head and the body, using these pieces right here to give it more of a rocky look. I think that really fits this dragon very well, and I wish it was bulkier and they would use more of those pieces just to give it more of that, you know, that rocky dragon type look for an Earth dragon. I really like those aspects, even though it's not entirely accurate. I think it works for him. Another thing is, you know, these fans, I would have liked to see two more, one on each side, just to give it a more complete look all the way around the, you know, around the head, so that when you look at it from the front, it just feels more complete. Another thing is really wings. Like, you can't leave out wings on a dragon, man. You have to get those in there somehow. You know, they could have found a way. They could have increased the budget a little bit, added a little neck, and put the dragon, or put the wings like right here. They could have done that. So it really is a shame that we don't get any wings, because I think it's really a very important part of a dragon, especially one that's seen in a show flying. So this dragon doesn't have any ways of flying unless it's some other mythical dragon, you know, but it's not what's seen in the show. So I think they could have gave it wings with a little bit of a different design. They could have pulled it off for sure. Another thing, the legs. I think if they would have left these back legs stationary like this, you can still move them, right? Because they're on big ball hinges. But if they would have designed these back ones a little bit differently, so that instead of this stationary leg doesn't move at all, right? If it had some joints in it so that it could stand up a little bit and move, right, where it's attached to the main body, right, that would have made the dragon itself way better. Because at that point you could stand it up and it could be the same height as this. You can swing the tail higher, so the mechanism is still there, and then you could also bring the mechanism lower by lowering the legs, and boom, you still have you've solved the problem of still using the boulder as part of your feature, right? So that could have been another thing they could have done. Another moving on to the side build, it's not nothing special. It's just there really. It's a placeholder that could have easily you could have given the Scythe of Quakes to Cole, and he could have had that in his hands instead of having that little build on the side. The boulder I like. I think it's a cool addition to have with the mechanism. The minifigures. I think the minifigures could have had. Well, I think we could have had more minifigures. Is the main thing. 2 minifigures for $35 US retail value, right? It just doesn't sit right with me. I feel like we could have had 1, maybe 2 more. Just not even like main minifigures. It could have been some Skulkin henchmen, and that would have sufficed. Because you know, it comes back to there's this big dragon, right? And we have Cole as its rider, and he's controlling it essentially. And we have one Skulkin minifigure. What's he gonna do against the dragon? I want a little force of Skulkin that's trying to take out this dragon through other ways. If anything, I would have liked to see this little stand turned into some type of artillery weapon for the Skulkin. Even if it wasn't canon to the show, it would have been much better than a stand. It would have added more force to Whiplash as him battling a dragon. But yeah, I think seeing at least 1, maybe 2 more minifigures would have been great. Those changes that I talked about with the dragon, definitely the addition of wings itself would have been great. And I think the dragon would have been a lot better, even if the color scheme didn't match what was in the show. But again, as always, tell me what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys agree with my opinions? Disagree? I know the dragon provides a lot of nostalgia for people, and I don't disagree with that. But I think they could have always, done it a little bit better. So again, like, comment what you think, subscribe if you are enjoying the content, and I will see you guys in my next video.